All right. So I would like to welcome you all. Thank you so much for appearing here from all over the world, with people from Africa, from Europe joining in. And yeah, so to come to this little discussion about early career scientists in the Convention of Biological Diversity's COPs. A few of you have taken part in the COPs in the last COP15 in Montreal at the end of 2022, and a few of you have already had this conversation with me, and I would like to take this as a conversation starter, really, to talk about young scientists' role in the implementation. And this is both scientists and activists, because we know that environmental issues at this point are not only it's not only enough to present the science, but it's also necessary to take action, to pressure, and to communicate them and discuss them as critically as possible as well. So I said, let's talk about our role in implementation here. So we have the YES network, the Young Ecosystem Services Specialists. We're the early career researcher network of the Ecosystem Services Partnership. And we focus, as the name says, mostly on ecosystem services research. Then we have the International Forestry Student Association that obviously focuses on forestry. Then we have ECOP, the Early Career Ocean Professionals. And last but not least, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, which has done an incredible work in representing young people in the CBD for several years now, for 6-7 years, I think. And the conversation really started among a couple of members in last December at the Montreal COP, seeing how we all have kind of similar interests and share a couple of maybe political goals and of representation of scientists in the COP. And this is obviously not an all-encompassing group. This is like we have talked to, or I have talked to those three groups that I noticed have been present in the same spaces as me. But obviously, so Charlie already mentioned this here. He's from iGEM, so there are other people who are obviously also interested in this conversation. And the idea is to expand this group of early career scientists as widely as possible. So this is by no means an exclusive group, and just really a conversation starter among early career scientist organizations and networks. So as I already mentioned, we at the past COP, the youth representation was probably at a historical level. We were more than 100 youth delegates that were under the banner of youth and with a youth badge that came from all continents. Really, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network managed to organize both accreditation and funds for many people also from the Global South to be present in those spaces. Latin America was very present, and Africa was very well represented in this group. And I, as a YES representative and part of the executive team of YES, actually flew under the banner of GYBN Brazil, which is where I'm living and I'm also active in. And thanks to the work of this young lady in the middle here, Brenda Igizios, she made sure that also other scientists from Brazil would be present in this COP. And so the GYBN has the mission to represent young people. That also includes working for and with other youth organizations. So that is why, well, the GYBN encompasses a huge number of young people. That also includes young scientist organizations. But so what at the beginning of the youth pavilion in the spot of the COP in Place Quebec, which it was called, we organized with Maria, who is also here today, and Adiza from ECOP Africa, Abir from the Sahara Observatory, and Mohammed from Plant for the Planet, a little discussion round on ideals and ideas for living in harmony with nature. and on our kind of dual role as young scientists, but also as young activists, and working kind of in the two spaces of the GYBN, but also representing our work and our scientific endeavors at the COP, and even doing research about the COP as a space in the case of some. So really, I think the critical point of the conversation that made me think that we needed a conversation among other groups and other networks here was our conversation with Anne Lagoderin from the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. We had the chance to meet her with a couple of ECOPs people and talked about how there's relatively little youth representation in the science policy platform. So the CBD is kind of the political and diplomatic part of biodiversity, global biodiversity governance, and IFSA provides the science and sums up the science for those decision-making processes. And of course, the IFSA assessments and all of the knowledge that was generated and summed up in the IFSA assessments was represented in the CBDs, but there are a couple of aspects, especially that one that the GYBN touches on very well, I think, which is intergenerational justice. That maybe in the IFSA process is not so well represented, and I think young scientists could have better representation in that corner of the process, I would say. This was at the academic stall with a couple of representatives, Canadian representatives from the IFSA, and they also did basically the same thing as COP in the COP space and invited other youth organizations who would like to talk about their role in doing research on and helping to implement the global biodiversity framework that came out of this COP. And so as young people, we have the youth constituency, but since a few years, this is something that Maria knows how to talk about a lot better. We also have the academic constituency, academic and research caucus that is represented in the COP. Maria, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. Yes, exactly. So this is one of the major groups, because the ones who are not maybe familiar also with the whole process, we can say that there are different major groups that allows to give different opening statements, or to give statements as a major group. And one can say NGOs, is it the youth, is the academic and research, is the indigenous communities, also like organizations. So we have all these like major groups. And then when it comes to academic and research, since many academics come from different backgrounds or different, let's say, intentions for the COP, and then it became actually a major group since not so long ago, when for some like problems with administration, that they gave too little badges and they had to share it with each other, and then it became something like more of like an informal organization, that it was self-organized to facilitate the access to the COP. So now we had for the first time for the COP15 that it was a major group, and then they could have an open statement. And what they do is that we have it here in the yes, so they made it so that everyone who had a badge like of academic and research, because as Niklas said, like he's also a researcher, but he came as a youth badge in the conference. So here like the critical thing was like, okay, you have a badge of academic and research, so that they check that you come from a registered institutional organization like a university or so. And what they do is like they really facilitate potential collaborations between the different academic and research delegates, the share of experience, and so that everyone has access to the opportunities provided by the Secretariat. But they don't want to position themselves to have a joint position on the negotiation text, because as I said, as academics, we come from different backgrounds. So you have some academics joining the COP because they are studying it. Some others focus more into biotechnology problems. Others want to really simply reach out and then to help with their knowledge. So kind of like you have to find a common ground among all the researchers. And that's why this green ticks is that what it's for, and then not to have a position in the negotiation text. You have to do it as yourself as an observer, because use if you want to. As I said, the next point, so it's not to express specific positions, and then they can make these statements as an observer, because that's basically the other role that you can have as an academic and research sometimes. Yeah, so it's mainly that evidence is basically what unified us as researchers. And yeah, I think we can, here is like a bit of like a small information, and then we can take it later or whatever.
That's super helpful. Thank you so much, Maria, for this this explanation. So we have those two major groups, and I think most of you who are here right now or watching this later kind of could position themselves in between both. And I think the critical point here is really that there is no joint position in academia and research that unites. And then something else that we noticed, I think, was that the academia and research space was being used in a very different manner than the youth space. For the youth, as a physical booth at the COP, it was a gathering point. Everyone got together, discussed, exchanged information, said where help was needed to track, for example. And academia, everyone organized themselves kind of separately. There were some punctual events, but it was a very, very different logic in terms of representation. And I think there are some things that we could discuss and see where we as young scientist organizations could find our space in that, maybe of occupying that space a little better. The other space where there was some youth organizations present, and where there was political representation of youth in that sense, if you like, is the Science Policy Forum, which traditionally takes place alongside the COPs. I think the first one took place here in Brazil. Was it COP 10? I don't remember exactly. But so there is the Science Policy Forum that discusses exactly the state of science and what needs to be communicated to policymakers. They make conclusions of this event and recommendations that are then submitted to the SAPSTA, to the subsidiary body on implementation, and the open-ended working group that takes place during and in the intersessional periods between the COPs. So there is a space for early career scientists here. There was a session 12, if you want to go after this, that was specifically occupied by the University of Tokyo, because they also had a role in organizing the Science Policy Forum a little more, in a somewhat more active role. And so they gave the space to their young scientists here. Again, this is, I think, something that for the following this meeting and for the next COP, that we could try to get in touch with the organizers a little earlier and kind of have a little more diverse representation in the space, and try to maybe argue for or organize something a little wider than this. And then this is not particularly part of the COPs, but it is something that IPSAS has, IPSAS for Yes has been a very important space. For now, we've been present since IPSAS 6. IPSAS 10 is coming up this year in Bonn, in Germany, at the end of August and beginning of September. And there are a couple of assessments that are starting to get a lot wider audience, a lot more scientific interest, especially because they delve into different topics like the business assessment, for example, that has attracted very different crowds than just people looking into the conservation of species. So the IPSAS space is also starting to become a wider space for representation, where we are organized there as an observer as well. So if any of you are interested in joining the delegations, talking about the representation of IFSA, for example, that I think is also present at the IPSAS, we could see a little bit about how to also make use of the dynamics and organize ourselves together, share information, and well, getting down to what I think the heart, the good stuff, the heart of the idea of today, and I think something that Lava is also going to talk about a bit, is the implementation part. So where are the results of our science and of our scientific findings actually going to make a difference? So as we've seen, that the academic community is very diverse. We have very different research topics that often do not really converge, and it's difficult to communicate them exactly because of this. But when we look at the implementation level, there are political kind of points, bottleneck points, for example, that we could use and make use of together as scientists to target them. For example, the national focal points for biodiversity. They're depending on the size of your country. Those focal points are sometimes just one or two people. Sometimes they are very, very widely spread. So there are starting to be ocean specialists, terrestrial specialists, specialists for governance questions, surrounding synthetic biology, for example, that some of you may follow. And I think we would gain a lot from trying to organize ourselves a little bit around those possible focal points and communicating in a more united way with them, which both benefits scientists, but also I think benefits the decision makers themselves. So what came up throughout the COP conversations, particular in conversations that I've had with the GYBN from Austria, but also with the Bolivians and a couple of other individuals that we talked about, was that those young scientist organizations like YES, IFSA, and ECOP have an amazing amount of young specialists in some fields. If you write a PhD thesis on one of those specific issues that are part of the COP and of the Global Biodiversity Framework, there could be so many uses to it, and there are many people interested in it, but maybe there is a lack of communication. And what we came up with, or in those conversations, was really that we could make use of the young networks that we are to provide, for example, the GYBN with specific trainings, with specific questions, with alerting about, for example, a country's position that might be very detrimental to achieving those goals. And so we've been talking a little bit about target-specific webinars, for example. So we have 23 targets, and we could try to either group them together or try to be very ambitious and have a webinar on each of the at least of the most popular or most controversial targets of the post-2020 framework, that we could organize together, and making use of the huge pool of knowledge and of science that we have available, to share it with the science policy interface, with the global youth biodiversity network, or organizing it in a different way, seeing what the demands are, and then trying to respond to them from our young scientist side. So I hope this was not too much information. This was like more than 15 minutes that I had planned on giving a short introduction to what the idea for this event was. And what I would like to do now is hear from you. I've heard Francis Boafo, who from IFSA would like to say something on the IFSA positions and thoughts on this. And maybe after we could hear from Lova from GYBN Sweden to start, and then the mic is open for hearing it from all of you. So yeah. Francis, yes, there you are.
Nicholas, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Am I audible? Yes, okay. All right, so thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm very excited to be here. Sorry, I can't share my video. My network is a little bit not stable, so there's a little bit of a technical issue. Yeah, so from the part of IFSA, um, once again, we are very excited that we have GYBN, we have ES Network, we have the ECOP, and all these youth organizations with all their vast resources have come together to talk about our position in the implementation process. And so from EFSA, I'll just like to mention just a few points, then the others can add up, then we can have an all-rounded conversation about the issue. So one of the most important things I think I picked up from the short presentation Nicholas gave was in respect to collaborations and constant communication. So it's like we have a very large pool of young scientists who have great knowledge in various thematic areas in relation to the post biodiversity work, and also some issues relating to biodiversity conservation and global biodiversity. But it looks like we have scattered efforts all across, and we are not together. We are not communicating amongst ourselves. So one of the major things we like to talk about mostly when it comes to these issues is collaborations, like we are doing now, so that we now know that GYBN is doing something which IFSA has knowledge in, and so the youth in that area can contribute to. Yes, has a large pool of people who are working on ecosystem services, and maybe ECOP has some great youth who are working also in different countries. And one of the important things about these collaborations is that we bring different perspectives from different parts of the world, and that is very, very important to achieving some of the goals in the post biodiversity framework. So I'll just like to end here shortly so that the others can also come on board with some ideas. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you so much, Francis, for those perspectives. And it's great to hear that you already have some collaborations going on with the GYBN. I'm curious to learn more about that. Lova, do you want to give us your perspective?
Yeah. No, I'm just happy to hear about this. I'm not yet in my early career as scientist. I'm still last year master, but hopefully soon. But what I wanted to say is that we in GYBN Europe has been starting to plan something about is outreach about the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And one point we're thinking about focusing on was to compare like the science, what does the science say, how does the reality look, and what does the framework says. And thinking to maybe make this quite easy to communicate, like, oh, is this target, it would say for target 3, for example, that GBF says we need to protect 30%. And then you look, how does it look in reality? It's 10% for land and 17% for ocean. And then you look to science, what does it say? Is 30% enough? And maybe communicate some way like green, orange, red, and do this for some of the more critical targets, or maybe more like highlighted. I know we have, like, this is still starting up, so it might be focused on the ones with numbers, because that's quite easy to check against science. Is the numbers right? Otherwise, maybe just highlight a few of the more talked about targets. So this will be mostly something to communicate social media thinking, but maybe also we're going to do this, and then we're going to do a few other things for other targets to summarize in some longer thing. So yeah, that was a project we just started up. If someone of you would be interested to join it or collaborate.
Cool. Thank you so much, Lova. I think this goes a little bit in the tradition of the policy papers that the GYBN has been producing as well, also on Aichi, on the Aichi targets, on summing up a couple of specific issues, making them easily understandable, easily communicatable, which is something that sometimes as scientists, when we have a complex issue to communicate through a thesis. We don't manage to do that, and we often don't have the resources to just come up with an easily communicatable figure. So maybe Maria and I actually were both YES members, and we both met each other through our participation in the GYBN policy paper. So I think the GYBN has this always this great objective of making things easily understandable, which I don't know if all of you who are in this call know about this. The CBD in a nutshell that has been produced by the GYBN is probably the most widely used resource, even by national delegations. There have been several countries who in the COP process have been referencing it and saying this is super great to communicate even to our experts why we are doing a certain policy approach, why we are looking at it from this and this perspective. So this is something well, all of you are encouraged to take a look at and to see how your research fits into this area and which kind of more specific knowledge you could contribute in this field. Cool. Is there anyone from the ECOP network who would like to say something? Anthony unfortunately didn't manage to be here today.
Hello.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, this is Chris, and I'm representing Anthony. And of course, I know we are not coming from ECOP Global. We are coming from ECOP Africa, and I am the Ocean Literacy Coordinator. So I know fully well that we have lots of things that we're running within ECOP Africa because it's not been long. We started some of our programs, and of course, these are programs. We need a lot of collaborations, especially from young youths from Africa. We're running. We're starting to create our own blue curriculum, which we want to use to teach the younger generations from primary to secondary, and of course have a curriculum for those in the tertiary institutions also. And we want to apply a whole lot of multi-facet approach in doing some of the jobs we want to do this year. Want to use religion, want to use sports, want to use entertainment, want to use art. We want to use painting, and so we are in need of virtually different people from different spheres of endeavors and different professionals to help in developing this curriculum for us. And as such, this is not just about the usual things within the curriculum. Now we also want to train young youths within the ocean space, the biodiversity space, on how to use this curriculum so they can be able to start up their own clubs in different schools and in Africa generally, because I'm speaking for ECOP Africa. So I don't know if there's any other person from ECOP Global who can discuss more. So I think these are the plans that we have for ECOP. Let me hold it there then. Let me stop here, by the way. So any other collaboration, we are open for that. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That sounds very exciting and like something more concrete happening already. A blue curriculum. That's definitely something that I think will help to, as the ocean people, as we like to call them at the COP, will appreciate seeing that there's more ocean in the room, and having more presence and more visibility and material to use in education. That's maybe something else that some of you, depending on where in your academic career you are, Maria, you're teaching classes, I know. So having good didactic material is certainly also going to be of a lot of help. Other organizations we have, since you have the camera on, Charlie, would you like to, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here, but would you like to say something on the much disputed synthetic biology issue and where your organization stands with this?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I went to COP with iGEM, but I'm also kind of in the last year of my undergrad training in more sort of conservation ecology. So I'm kind of bridging across both sorts of disciplines. But so I'm kind of, iGEM kind of sort of takes the position that synthetic biology is useful. We need to use it responsibly. And it's really good to get youth engaged with it. And I can really get behind that. And so what I think is kind of really important to do, I think, to ensure that these kind of tools that are being developed get used well, is to really engage sort of both sort of synthetic biologists and biotechnologists with people doing sort of ecology and conservation work to make sure that kind of the tools that we're developing are helpful, are useful, and that they're being used responsibly. Because of course, there are risks, but there are also huge benefits to be had in terms of, stopping the use of pesticides potentially, and helping improve crops so we can preserve more land to help us get to sort of conserving 30% of land, and looking at target 17 as well on biosafety and biotechnology. So yeah, I think I'd really emphasize the importance of bringing people from different disciplines together.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's in the heart of the diversification that is taking place inside of the biodiversity sphere, I would say. A few people have seen it a little critically, that there is a wider opening in the CBD for very different actors going on now. Especially some people have been eyeing the business community entering the space and trying to lobby for very different interests. So that's definitely something that we as scientists can try to provide some compasses for. I think some guidance and critical accompaniment of exactly those more controversial issues. And it's great to hear that you say bringing in this whole ethical aspect that I think comes in at the hottest, at its peak, with the responsible use and the risks that are englobed in target 17. So I'd be super happy to continue, to think more specifically about how to organize this. And once we get, and that maybe puts me on the track to getting towards more specific recommendations. Once we get to the point of seeing if we can organize a webinar out of this, for example, if any of you are available for this, I see you already hinting towards the specific target that you could share some information on. We could see how to organize it in terms of either a discussion round or really as an educational thing, teaching a little more in a presentation style about it, and then trying to see what we can get out of this, writing a short paper, a short note, maybe a one-pager, something that is easily communicatable, or even more easily communicatable through social media, Instagram and Twitter, as Lava has mentioned before. Is there anyone else who would like to talk on behalf of either the research, their organization, or agenda? If that is not the case, yes. Go ahead, Ben.
If you can, do you see me and can hear me? Yeah, I see.
Yes, we can hear and see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. I hope you have all been well after the COP. I came in late to the conversation, but it might be interesting to talk a bit about a group we have set up so far. So my name is Bob, and I'm a PhD researcher at Delft University in the Netherlands. And after the COP, we met with some scholars and young researchers, mostly working on the ethical, legal, and social aspects of digital sequence information. And since then, we have now a bi-weekly meeting wherein we just talk about our research, just because we're mostly PhD researchers, giving some feedback on each other's proposals, and also with the long-term plan to address some themes in relation to access and benefit sharing. And yeah, this just I thought it was maybe nice to tell you that this sub-theme of the COP is being explored by a group of young researchers. And yeah, we're also trying to explore like how we do that in the best way possible. And also, if you know any people that are interested in this theme of benefit sharing from their own practice, from their communities, or maybe in their network, we are also open to meeting new people. We're very interested actually in meeting other people. So reach out to us and we'll invite you in there. I think maybe I'm not sure in the first half did people reflect on the COP outcome or
not specifically. So
okay, yeah.
The idea here is really to have a conversation starter.
Yeah. I'll leave
cool,
that.
But very nice to hear that you have a group discussing your specific research. That's exactly actually what I was hoping to hear.
Yeah.
So very happy.
Yeah.
Is Adam part of that group as well?
Yeah. And
yes.
Probably some of the others you've met there as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, very nice. Okay, so then we might approach you, eyeing your participation in a webinar to stir up some of the controversies and discuss a little bit and see who are some nice graphics to share the community.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think it's just also interesting to see how in between COPs you can get even information on what's happening, because for DSI it's super unclear what's happening, but there's already, I think, new policy developments. So I think such networks such as this are super nice to see what is happening in the CBD. Yeah,
absolutely.
And maybe we're at the negotiation tables in 10 years' times.
Possibly.
Against each other.
You certainly.
Or with each other, hopefully, as scientists. But glad to be here. So thanks.
Thank you for dropping by and joining us, even joining in a little later. So for those of you who joined in later, there are a couple. We're recording this meeting, so in case, I don't know if you've seen, if you want to share it with anyone else who could be interested in exactly those same conversations, following up on this beginning of a conversation between different networks with very different types of knowledge, but where they have similar objectives. They want to communicate their science. They want to get a space in the CBD or in the IFSA plenary, in the IFSA processes. Do make sure to share it with them, and let's try to see how to build either an ongoing conversation or at least a communication network out of this. It would be great. Like, this was something that I felt the responsibility I needed to push a little bit for the YES community, from the YES community, because there have been so many very nice and inspiring conversations with the GYBN on how young scientists could actually work much better together with the GYBN, how there's a huge pool of people who could be contributing and are willing to contribute, but don't know how to and where to. So I think this is the objective of today's conversation, really. So how is the general feeling about organizing something like a webinar series? There could be, following the structure of the targets, is really like a very simple way of organizing it. If we put it in a weekly, for example, 23 weeks, that makes half a year. That would make the maths of how to organize it very easy. But I know there are lots of counter arguments already on that. So I think there are some general discussions that would be necessary on the framework itself to understand why it exists. The controversies that happened towards the end. So when it was adopted, there was some pushback from the global south, from a couple of African countries, the DRC, to name the first one. That is something that I think does need some space for discussion as well. But that is a lot more political and much less scientific in the sense of communicating what we as biodiversity or ecosystem services scientists can contribute with. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how does the idea sound to you?
Hi, me again. Just thinking that, I mean, it sounds really good, like to have the webinars, but I'm just a bit scared that we have too much overlap then, if that's the idea also that was GYBN planning, as Lova said. So, I mean, in that case, I was also wondering, like, how would be the planning of the, if it would be also webinars, or if it would be like very easy, like kind of like a second part of, like, as we said, like CBD in a nutshell. So it's actually an easy document to follow, but maybe there are no webinars, maybe from the GYBN. So maybe that's how maybe we can have a bit of like, let's say, complementarity of, like, there is a document that's been written, but we can have those documents based on also discussion also of young researchers, or how do we take maybe different roles in there. I was wondering a bit, like, from the GYBN, how would the different topics of the different targets are covered, of like who's the expert basically saying those. Would it be also selected among the GYBN community, or maybe would it be maybe a general call for other like group of young researchers? So maybe that's also a nice way of collaborating with other expertise. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can answer that. So to begin with, it's in GBN Europe, so it's not within the global. But now we talk about it, it might be interesting to reach out there as well. But we're thinking not to make this too big, because we're planning to do a few other things as well, not only focus on the science aspect. But as I said, we were not planning any webinars and stuff, mostly a lot. And so far we're more thinking about like seeing what things we already can find online, and not gather a full group for every target, but more like a short, easy overlook of what already is out there. But that's why I joined the call today, to see, like, do we have someone who's really an expert in some fields, and if you, for example, this network is going to be do a seminar series and discuss the science of different targets, that would be valuable information, which we might be able to do, and we'll communicate. But we're not planning like too big of a thing of this, because we have other projects going on as well.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Then I think there has to be some coordination talks to understand a little better how we can contribute, how those things would overlap, or how. That's, I think, the main thing. One of the main things that came from the conversations as well was some organizations are trying so hard, making such a big effort to work on something for their own organization that other organizations could make use of, or that somebody in another organization has already done, but they don't know that it exists because it's not public or it's not published in a polished way in any sense. So what we could make use of really is the overlaps, and in organizing materials or events that could promote this, what we could do, for example, would be hooking one webinar on the first 5 targets to your first publication, your first material on the COP process, for example. That would be something to talk about. Mohammed, you've raised your hand some time ago.
Oh, thank you. I'm pretty new in this forum, so I'm in the yes. I work on ecosystem service assessment and evaluation. So just a quick suggestion, because for many years we are in virtual platform since COVID, and my experience is there are so many webinars all around the world. We are participating every day, so it's very one way. And sometimes I feel it's become less and less action-oriented, less effective somehow. So if you organize a webinar, so we are trying something. So before the webinar, we give some sort of 1-pager or 2-pager, kind of a living document. So this is the topic we're going to discuss. So this is something we're going to work on. Then this during the webinar, or after the webinar, before the webinar. So there are several time slots people can put their thought on the living document. So once the webinar is over, there is always something tangible, a living document. So everybody's thought is kind of documented, even is in a shorter form, maybe 2 pages at the end. So that remains kind of a brainchild, kind of a discussion outcome. So instead of just, one-way webinar, it's just a suggestion that if we can have kind of a tangible thing, because we'll be going to different forum in future, the next COP and so on. So these documents might help in the future. So that's just my thought. Thank you.
Okay, that's a great comment on so many online webinars, online activities going on that end up being brainchild, and not really developing into anything. Combining that with what Francis just left us with before he dropped out of the meeting was the idea of mapping which specific expertise is available in our networks. So that could be maybe something that I could take a lead on, maybe opening a survey, trying to organize the survey a little better, to understand which types of knowledge we have on the different targets. So circulating this kind of survey in the Yes, IFSA, ECOP network, maybe the IGEM as well, and through the GYBN, and asking people which topics they would like to learn more about. So that would definitely reduce a lot the amount of available topics. That's what I said. If we go just target by target, go through 23 targets, there will probably be huge waves of interest and non-interest, and engaging material and not very engaging material. So kind of coordinating it better with demands and availabilities. Kian or Ray, I can maybe throw this ball at you with the Yes membership survey that should be organized within the next few weeks or months. We always do one kind of yearly membership survey to understand what the needs of our community are, and maybe putting in something on those webinars would be an opportunity really to understand how our community sees it. And the input that Mohammed just gave
Hi guys, so I'm Ray, and so Niklas has been doing extremely well with the JES, so but now he's busy, so we take over. And my main task is organizing the education and training. And if Niklas, you remember, ECOP and also Global Young Biodiversity Network also proposed to cross-sectional training, I think a few weeks ago, and that we all want to have like a cooperation between three network. And it's actually kind of shared with the target 20 and 2020 and 21. about ensuring the traditional knowledge, and the knowledge between women, girls, children, young, and scientists. So this kind of thing that we could do. And for every year, the survey that Niklas talked about, this year we haven't done it yet, but usually when we have training and the training series, we will ask participants for their thing on the need. So because we are ecosystem service and because of service research, we usually focusing on valuation and mappings. Many people choose that instead of like going forward the need for biodiversity, I think. But of course, there's different between different organizations, and I could say like we can provide people who are specialized, like Mohammed in valuation and mapping expert. But for biodiversity, I'm not really sure in this topic. That's why we might need to like have a coordinate webinars that you guys had in a different organization and see like who can be in charge for different area. So we haven't started planning for this year yet, and I know ECOP also start planning already, and Global Young Biodiversity Network also asked IPBS for training after the CACUS Day. So we have demand for that, but we actually have not started to do or planning. Okay, this is everything I know so far.
Okay, but that's already a good amount of information that I think that wasn't on my radar at least. We do have the education and training group, which Ray is actually coordinating this year. So that would be something to also talk about, exactly because we had this conversation with the head of IFSA at the COP. When she said, if you need any types of specific training, please approach our the working groups and the specific focal points for that. So that might be something to look out for.
Yeah, we
Greg,
can demand it together, like as a group, different group, we demand one kind of specific task, so it's more legit, I think, and it can attract more larger amount of people.
Exactly. That's exactly what I think. When I was referring to politically organizing our demands, that's exactly what it would be. In front of like presenting demands to the IFSA makes a lot more sense if we do it as a group. And if there are several organizations behind a demand, it has a lot more force. Thank you, Ray, for that comment. That was really helpful. Greg, you had raised your hand earlier already.
Yeah, hi. Joining from New York, so it's a little early for me, so no video today, but just wanted to second the comments about making sure we cover different bases, because there's a lot that could be missed, and been doing some consulting following the CBD or the CBD COP. And I think one of the unifying themes for both thinking about unifying the climate and the CBD COPs, ecosystem services and biodiversity, is really nature-based solutions. And I think that's what we found in some of the reporting and advisement that we were doing for one of the high-level champions within the climate COP for next year. And I think nature-based solutions is a really unifying theme around things from climate finance and all these things that kind of essentially should unify these two agendas of climate and biodiversity, which is going to be challenging to do, but MBS feels like one of those themes that's important to dig in more. And I've been doing a lot of research on like good examples of cases, mature, still starting up, and would be happy to contribute and share with this group if that's useful.
Cool, thank you very much. That's another big issue that, well, IFSA and the IPCC have joined forces for their biodiversity and climate change assessment, or had a workshop on it that kind of produced a document on exactly the synergies between the two agendas. And I think nature-based solutions are certainly at the heart of it. whatever counts as nature-based solutions and which kinds of definitions circle around about them are certainly something that needs some more discussion. And there are fronts forming, I guess, in terms of definitions, but that's a very great and helpful hint as well towards looking at not only the biodiversity COP. I think with the GYBN we have this specialized kind of advocacy, youth advocacy for biodiversity governance, but of course with the grow of the attention being always focused on climate governance, it definitely makes sense to also look at where we can hook ourselves onto and make sure that the conversation is seen enough. So nature-based solutions is certainly a good hint for that. There was some other hand up. Do you want to answer back to that, Greg? And sorry
no, I was
for
going to say thanks.
the time, by the way.
Thanks for mentioning that. And yeah, the IPBES is stuff I need to look at a little bit more closely, and I got that from this conversation. So thank you.
All right, cool. Thank you. So Charlie just left. There was one more hand, I think, and then I would say we should close it in respect of everyone's time. I know it's late for some, early for others. Who else wanted to say something?
Very shortly, a question. When do you think the registration for the IPBES conference starts?
I think it's 3 or 4 months before, so it should be opening in like April, May. But we will definitely be communicating about it as soon as we have more information on it. From the side of Yes, I'm going to circulate it through our networks, throughout the like social media, especially Twitter.
Yeah. Okay.
Francis, you wanted to say something as well.
Yes, a quick one, Nicholas. So I think Chris, if I'm not getting the name wrong, he mentioned something about curriculum in his presentation. So I wanted if he needed anything in the perspective of an African biodiversity, he can reach out to me, and I have a good network of young people working in biodiversity related issues in the region, so I can actually connect them to him so that they can help him with the drafting his curriculum. And also I wanted to ask about what are the next steps from here. What are we moving to? What are the actions from this meeting? Yeah.
Okay, so that's great to see already a connection being made out of this. At least one helpful connection that is specific. I think so. My goal was to take this as a conversation starter and see how we continue with this conversation. So if it makes sense to either keep this group, like this was a very open invitation and a minimally structured meeting to talk a little bit about my impressions and our impressions that we had from the COP that we wanted to talk about, and then see if we take it into more specific meeting spaces between 2 or 3 organizations and networks, or if we have, that would have been the ideal to say like, okay, we're going to come up with a webinar series out of this, or keep this as a more long-term endeavor in the preparations for COP16. This is also taking the momentum from COP15 that is still there. I don't know if the ones who went to Montreal, I was completely energy drained after, and it took me some time to get back up. And now I'm in the final phase of my PhD thesis, so I should also not get engaged in too many things in the next 4 to 5 weeks because I have to hand in my thesis. But after that, I think lots of, if we get together again and see if we, for example, have another meeting at the beginning of March about how to proceed with this after having had a conversation with GYBN Europe, having maybe done a short for example, Instagram questionnaire or so on who would be interested in contributing with their research to some webinars or so, to get at least some feedback out of our communities. So I would say I'd call again for another meeting sometime in March to take this back on and see how the GYBN could take a more active role in this, maybe. Chris, do you want to answer back to this?
Well, I think I've been raising up my hand even before Francis spoke.
Sorry.
Okay, should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think. Okay, Francis, that's great. Let's connect after the call. Then also, I wish to also put this that if anybody needs someone that is within storytelling, indigenous, African indigenous knowledge, you can also reach out to me, and because we are working on that approach to see that most of these forgotten wisdoms are all brought together for learning too. Because it can surprise you that when we were talking about ocean color, I found out that some of the communities in Africa here were even predicting, using ocean color themselves to predict when to go for fishing, and also when to know a particular shelled plant called a periwinkle, when to know how to the time to harvest them. So these knowledges are very, very important to even to scientists, and we too need to get this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a very nice input. I think storytelling is something that in IFSA has been coming up more and more throughout the years, as well as a way to communicate scientific knowledge, but also local and indigenous knowledge to show how many of those go hand in hand. That would be something that I think makes a lot of sense to maybe even include in the webinars or the educational seminars that Ray mentioned here, that is on targets 20 and 21, especially target 20 on indigenous and local knowledge, where we could see which kind of cases to present to help gather some evidence and some examples that we can then use in our communication and research. All right. I think looking at the time, we've gone a little bit 10 minutes over. My stupid camera, my computer is getting old. So in respect of time, I would say I would close the call for today and call you all to stay posted. Follow the Yes Network on the different social media platforms on Instagram and Twitter, where we are a little more active, but also we have a LinkedIn and Facebook group where you can look us up. There are some other crowds that you can reach through those networks. Do follow us to stay in the loop for the conversations. It was great to connect with you all, to hear from IFSA, from GYBN, from ECOP. And I think really the idea of channeling our demands and seeing exactly about which demands we have in front of IFSA, for example, in terms of education and training, we can organize a little better, a little more concrete until March, and then have a next call next month to talk about this. Thank you all so much for joining us, and I'll hear back from you. And I'm very, very excited to see what comes out of this. All right.
Okay. See you guys. Have a nice day.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. By the way,